So I saw Tenet a couple weeks ago in theaters. The reason why this review video has been delayed for so long is because the movie is so rich. It's filled with so much content, and it's really hard to wrap your head around what you actually saw. So I need to take a lot of time, more time than I usually would for any other movie, to sit down, think about what I saw, and just compile a few notes before I made this video. I'm going to try and make this video as spoiler-free as possible, simply because I do believe this is a movie you should definitely see for yourself. And if you can, go to the theater to see it as well. Even if I were to get into spoilers for anyone watching who has not seen the movie, I'm pretty sure that the spoilers wouldn't even make sense to you. It really is a movie that you have to see yourself. So as you guys know, my movie reviews are very informal. They're purely my opinion, and all I'm really doing here is just kind of telling you what I enjoyed and what I took from the movie, so that when you see it yourself, you might think the same thing, or you might not. So let's start with how great the cast is. John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, Kenneth Branagh, and even Aaron Taylor Johnson. You can really tell when watching this film it does have a James Bond feel to it. I saw a post the other day of John David Washington, all of his outfits throughout the movie, comparing it to Sean Connery's James Bond films, and they are very identical. They're very similar. It really did feel like James Bond in the sense that John is James Bond. He's 007, and Robert Pattinson is another qualified CIA or MI6 agent working alongside him. Then you have Kenneth Branagh, who plays the evil mastermind, the person in every James Bond movie who has this master plan to destroy the world or to destroy the country. And then you have Elizabeth Debicki, who is the wife to Kenneth Branagh's villain, and she's like the damsel in distress, and James Bond always has a damsel in distress, right? They have this undeniable connection in the movie, John and Elizabeth, where you can tell they want more from each other, you can tell they mean something to one another, but Nolan never dives in deep enough to give you that full-blown James Bond feel, because that's not what this movie is about. He only used aspects of it, but let alone the aspects he used made it feel rich, and it made it feel like a James Bond movie that we never got, and it's not even James Bond. It was really cool to see on screen. So let's get into what the base of the film actually is, and that's time inversion. And when you first start watching the movie, you think you understand it, but as the movie goes on, it gets so much more complicated and so much more hectic. To put it in the most simple terms possible, time inversion is simply something that has reversed its course. So in everyday life, our trajectory is forward. We are always moving towards the future. But time inversion is simply flipping that. It's altering it, it's reversing it, where you now live in a world where everything moves in reverse. What Nolan managed to do so well is that the laws of physics do not apply the same way. So in time inversion, when everything is reversed, being in the normal world, if you will, our world, the forward world, will not work the same way as when you are inverted. There's a great part in the movie where the protagonist, John David Washington's character, has to use the time inversion machine and go into the reverse world. The only way he can breathe is if he uses an oxygen tank, because the oxygen in the time inverted world is not the same as ours. That is breaking the laws of physics. So if he tried breathing the air over there, he would suffocate, he would die. It doesn't enter our lungs the same way. It's not the same. And I think that little attention to detail is so fascinating, because you could have easily made this movie and said, I'm entering a world where things move in reverse. But you would have never paid attention to the fact that oxygen would not work the same there. Even when he enters the inverted world, he goes outside, he looks up into the sky, and there's birds flying backwards. If you've seen the trailer, you've maybe seen a scene where him and Robert Pattinson are in a car, they're driving down a highway, and there's a silver car that's just tumbling down the highway, and it reverses back onto its wheels and starts backing up. Well, little do you know, that's actually John David Washington, the protagonist, in that silver car. But for him, it's such a crazy concept. He is currently moving forward to his objective by moving backwards, by being in a reversed world. I think the science and the physics that Nolan used for this movie is absolutely phenomenal. You know, the fact that he's just a movie director, he's not a scientist, he's not Albert Einstein, yet he's finding ways to make this so scientifically accurate. Continuing on the time inversion subject, there is a fantastic scene where they first find the time inversion machine at the Freeport airport. They're analyzing it, and they could tell something has happened there already. There's bullet holes in the glass. There's a gun straggled onto the floor. They basically say, like, something has happened here, but for us, it hasn't happened yet. And all of a sudden, some guy in like a SWAT military suit jumps out of the time inversion machine and starts fighting the protagonist. I don't want to get into too many details about that scene because, once again, I'm trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. But what's so awesome about that scene, the protagonist, John, he is moving in real time. He's moving forward. But the man who just hopped out of the time inversion machine is moving backwards. So the fight is happening reverse. And I think what makes it so much more awesome, they didn't use an effect, they didn't use a green screen, they didn't go and fix it in post and reverse the fight scene to make it look like they're fighting in reverse. No, they actually fought in reverse when they filmed this movie. They learned how to make it look like it was inverted, like it was different. Never, as far as I'm concerned, I've never seen a movie where they've done something like that. No movie has done a fight scene in reverse, and if they have, I don't think the actors were actually choreographing a fight scene in reverse. It would have just been fixed in post. But they didn't do this here. And all of the fight scenes that we had that do take place in that time inverted state, I give them the utmost credit for being dedicated and showing the fact that they wanted to do this. They didn't want to just take the easy way out. They actually wanted to choreograph a live inverted fight scene. You know, you must be wondering, with time inversion, does that mean time travel has a purpose in this movie? And ever so slightly. It's really interesting because the villain, Kenneth, who his name, by the way, is Sator, he is dedicated to finding 7 parts of this algorithm. And this algorithm is something that will destroy the entropy of our existence, of the way our world works and moves forward, and it will completely wipe out what we've ever known. It will completely destroy the past, rewrite history, and change everything once and for all. You probably think to yourself, well, if this algorithm destroys the past, what does that mean for the future? Why would the future simply create something that will destroy our past and that will simply cease them from existence? And the answer is a rather simple one, but an interesting one. In the future, a woman, a scientist, she creates this algorithm to essentially destroy their past history as they know it. Basically, the past, which is us and the people before, we have completely ruined the earth with environmental damage and countless other things, global warming, you name it. The future hates us for that. We don't know how far in the future this is. It could be 20 years, it could be 100 years, we don't really know. So this woman realizes the grave mistake that, yes, if we destroy our past, we will cease to exist. We will not be here anymore. But as it's explained in the movie, whoever this decision was up to destroy the past and create a potentially new future. Most people agreed that they would sacrifice their own lives if that meant destroying the past and completely starting brand new. But she didn't feel comfortable in that. So she took the algorithm, she split it up into 7 pieces, and she sent it back in time to different parts of the world. And then right after, she killed herself. So now, what's the deal with Sator? Why does he want the algorithm? Why is he trying to find the 7 pieces? And why is he trying to destroy the time that he's currently living in? Well, he works for a villain type company in the future who have acquired him to get the 7 pieces, to put them together and end the world as they know it so they can essentially start fresh. He came from a war-torn Poland where he has seen destruction and he's seen what humankind can do to their own planet. So with seeing that, with knowing it, he probably has a better understanding of why he thinks the world should be destroyed. So continuing down this time travel thread, I think what else is really interesting is the fact that there are no parallel dimensions, there are no timelines or universes in this movie. That law does not work here. Whatever is going to happen in the future is what is going to happen, and the only way to alter it is by this movement called the temporal pincer movement. Now, how I understand the temporal pincer movement, it is a way to receive and gain knowledge by moving forwards and backwards at the same time. Now, how are you going to do that at the same time? Well, you won't, but a team can. And what happens at the end of the movie with the posterity scene, which is about 12 minutes or longer for the final act, one team is moving forward and it is receiving data, it's receiving information from the other team that is in the inverted world, feeding them info on how to move forward and what to do next. If some time inversion buff saw me explaining this right now, they would probably say that's wrong for many reasons, but it's the easiest way to kind of understand it, and when you go into the movie, you'll be like, okay, I can see what Tyrell is trying to say here. He's not completely accurate. You know, who knows? Maybe I am accurate. I don't know. I'm just trying to explain it as best as I can. And they use this temporal pincer movement, I'm gonna call it TPM. They use this TPM so many times throughout the film, but majority of it is at the end of the movie. And as far as I know, TPM is an actual theory. Like, I could be wrong, but I think the military uses it, not in a time inverted way, but I think they use a version of a temporal pincer movement. And it's so fascinating how you can take an idea of gaining and receiving and giving information, but using it now in the forward world and the reverted world. Another fascinating thing about the end of the movie is Robert Pattinson, Neil. Neil is in the end battle 3 separate times. He goes through not just one time inversion, but a second time inversion. You technically see 3 Neils all moving towards the same goal. In the middle of the war zone, Sator's right-hand man, I guess you could call him, is inside of this bunker protecting the algorithm from going off so the protagonist doesn't stop it. So as the protagonist, with Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who is this general, some sort of sergeant in the army, as they're racing towards the algorithm trying to get there on time, you see 3 Neils. One Neil is racing his way towards the protagonist to help him. The second Neil entered a time inversion chamber so that he could leave the bunker, grab a car, throw a rope down the bunker, and pull John and Aaron Taylor Johnson out of the hole before it blows up. And then the third Neil dies by saving the protagonist while fighting Sator's right-hand man just before he steals the algorithm. This must be the absolute worst review of all time because I must be speaking gibberish. It's so interesting, this movie. I'm thinking about it in my head and I'm fully comprehending it. I'm understanding it. but it's, for me at least, it's so hard to talk about and actually say what I want to say without, one, ruining the movie, and two, not being smart enough to say it. We've covered time inversion for the length of this video so far. I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the other things I really liked. For example, the music by Ludwig Goranson, and I really hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But the music is so powerful, and it sounds like this sci-fi horror action thriller. It's a bit of everything mixed in. There's this really haunting sound he has where he actually got Christopher Nolan to breathe into a microphone, and then he reversed his breathing. And you hear it in many of the different soundtracks of the movie. You know, it's unfortunate that Christopher Nolan could not get Hans Zimmer to compose this project, but if it wasn't going to be Hans Zimmer, I think Ludwig was the perfect person for this. In the earlier video I made a couple weeks ago about everything we know about Tenet, I constantly made mention that this movie was completely filmed in Imax. Let me just say that this movie proves why movies should be filmed in IMAX in general, and it also proves why a movie like this had to be filmed in IMAX. Every single scene has a meaning. Every single time and the beautiful thing about IMAX, as I've explained before, it is the entire screen. So you get to see absolutely everything. With all the twists and turns and mind-bending action, if there's one thing I gotta say I wasn't too fond of the movie, I don't really know whose issue this would fall on. I don't know if this would be editing. I don't really know if this is simply the movie theaters because of how loud it is in IMAX. I did notice that sometimes the music and the bass were so loud, I couldn't really understand what the actors were saying, and sometimes they were in very pivotal moments. That's the one complaint I had, but I mean, then again, it could simply be because it is an IMAX theater and the speakers are crazy loud and the room is huge, so the vibrations and the noises. It could be a combination of many things. I think the biggest thing this movie did for cinema and for film and for the future of film is it revolutionized it in so many ways. I think Christopher Nolan does so many great things in his movies, and he always changes the way a movie can be looked at. But I think Tenet in general, whether or not you loved it or you hated it, I think when it comes to actually filming a movie and the science behind movies, he really showed how movies can be changed. They filmed fight scenes backwards practically. He used real world science, and that's not the first time he's done it. He's done it in Inception, he's done it in Interstellar, especially Interstellar, and now he's doing it in Tenet. Christopher Nolan is simply just on another level of filmmaking, and he has a mind that not many other directors have. So shall we say this was the most complicated review or opinion piece of all time?
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
Nuclear holocaust.
No. Something worse.
Tenet was a brilliant showcase of how modern-day cinema could be revolutionized. From the costume design to the sci-fi espionage storytelling, it was James Bond stopping World War III on a ticking time clock. Christopher Nolan has changed how we can look at time travel and a time-inverting roller coaster. Alright, let's punch this thing into the T.M.M diagnostic and see what we get. Alright, calculations show we are going to give this a 10 out of 10.
What'll happen here?
Hasn't happened yet.